Hello, Partnering for Vaccine Equity learning community members and others working to advance vaccine equity. I'm Luis Gallardo, the Learning Community Website Manager and a member of the group learning team. On behalf of our team at the Urban Institute and our partners at the CDC, thanks for being with us this afternoon. We know that PAVE learning community members are eager to use data about the communities they serve to plan their vaccine equity strategies and tailor program activities. But it can be hard to know where to begin in terms of what data is publicly available, where to find it, and how to use it. At this learning session, you'll hear about a recently launched resource developed by the CDC that's meant to make driven decision-making a lot less overwhelming. You'll get a live demonstration of the new online tool, which is called the Vaccine Equity Activity Planner, and there will be time for Q&A afterwards as you test it out on your own. Next slide, please. Before I hand things over to our speakers, I'll review a few key points about how this session will work. First, we offer live interpretation from English to Spanish during our events. If you would like to listen to the Spanish language channel, simply click on the globe icon in the Zoom taskbar at the bottom of your screen. You've all been muted upon entry to the session. If you have a question for our speaker or panelists during the presentations, we ask that you use the Q&A tool in your Zoom taskbar to submit it. We'll also have dedicated time for questions and answers at the end when you can also ask your question live. Just use the raise hand feature at that time and we'll take you off mute so you can speak. The chat room feature is also open today, and we encourage you to use it to introduce yourself or comment on what you're hearing. However, please try not to put your questions for the speakers and panelists in the chat because we might miss them there. Submit them via the Q&A instead. If you have any technical difficulties at any point during the session, send an email to our community manager's inbox, vaxequitylearning@urban.org, so that we can assist with troubleshooting. And finally, as with all of our events, we will post the slides and a recording of this event on our community website and circulate them through the digests that go out through the CDC-managed Adult Vax Program listserv, which all PAVE members should be a part of. Next slide. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's featured speakers. We are joined by 3 members of Deloitte's Data-Informed Technical Assistance Team, a group committed to providing PAVE partners with tools and hands-on support for using data to inform their vaccine equity program strategy and activities. Speakers from the Data-Informed Technical Assistance Team include Ryan Ferreira, Giovanna Brown, and Eve Lee. Maybe joining us at some point during the session will be James Lee, a medical officer at the CDC's Immunization Services Division. Thanks to each of you for joining us today to show us this dynamic new tool. I'll let your team take it over from here.
Thank you so very much, and hello to the learning community. It's so great to be with you all, and thank you for joining us for today's session. I will go ahead and kick us off. My name is Ryan Ferreira. I'm part of the Data-Informed Technical Assistance team, and I'm one of the lead contractors supporting the PAVE program with data-informed insights to support your planning for vaccine confidence and uptake. If we go to the next slide, I'll give you a quick preview of what we're going to be covering today. We already started our introductions. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the Data-Informed Technical Assistance team that many of you are familiar with already through our support to you over the past few years. And then I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Eve, who's going to walk you through an overview of the Vaccine Activity Planner and some of the helpful tips and tricks for using it, and do a live demo of the planner for you all. And then we're going to do an example scenario and question and answer facilitated by my colleague, Giovanna. And we'll go over the how-to guide for how you can use the planner to support your own efforts. And then we'll close with some next steps. If we go to the next slide, I know that's an awful lot to cover in an hour, so you'll see that there will be opportunities to engage with us even after today's session to make sure that you are all feeling very comfortable using this new publicly available tool. But first, just to do a quick reminder, many of you are familiar with the Data-Informed Technical Assistance team. We're part of the Partnering for Vaccine Equity program, and we exist to support all of you with using data to inform your vaccine outreach and confidence planning. Typically, you may remember us from providing tailored data analysis reports tailored to your priority populations and your geographies, pulling from a variety of different data sources. But something that we also do is help to provide training on publicly available tools and data that you can use to empower your planning. And that's what we're here to do today. We're here to share with you all, as was mentioned previously, this recently released CDC Vaccine Activity Planner, which is a publicly available mapping and data tool that will be available to you all and that you can use to explore different population data, vaccination data, and a variety of other data sets to support your planning. If we go to the next slide. As I mentioned, we're here to talk about the Vaccine Activity Planner. Today is the webinar. This is just the beginning of the rollout of this incredibly useful tool. We also have put together a how-to guide, which my colleagues will walk through the main components with you, so you're familiar with those, and that will be shared after today's webinar. But this is just the beginning of the rollout, and there will be opportunities to provide additional training in office hours for PAVE partners, should you be interested afterwards. And we'll provide our contact info if you don't already have it, so that you can reach out to us and we can arrange that with you. So without further ado, I'm excited to pass it over to my colleague Eve to get into this new CDC Vaccine Activity Planner and share that with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, the CDC's Vaccine Activity Planner, it is a mapping tool that is newly launched, and it includes information about social demographic indicators, and you can also map those with measures of vaccine confidence, coverage, access, as well as specific points of interest for your planning and outreach activities for vaccination. On the right-hand side here, we noted some of the general questions as you can start to think about how the Vaccine Activity Planner can help you plan activities. First is understanding what communities should be prioritized for vaccination support. You can use the planner tool to identify communities with potential socioeconomic or physical access barriers to vaccination. And you can also use the tool to examine the proximity of vaccination sites to where the communities in need are located. In addition, you can also use the Vaccine Activity Planner to potentially consider strategies that should be used to disseminate messages and also conduct outreach. For example, identifying community partners that you can reach out to get involved with and engage, such as schools, libraries, or religious organizations in the area. And then this can also inform how information and materials can be tailored to address your community's unique needs. So before I switch over and dive into the live demo, just wanted to give you an outline that what we'll plan to do. We will kind of go through these step by step. To first search for an area, explore the layers that are available in the layer list for various socioeconomic, health information, and points of interest data topics. And then we'll explore how to add additional data from the Esri Living Atlas. And then finally showing you how to search, filter, and analyze further data. So bear with me as I switch over to my browser for the live demo of the Vaccine Activity Planner. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this is the homepage for the Vaccine Activity Planner. You can find general information about the data tool, as well as, if I scroll down a little bit, some highlighted data sets that are featured in the content library that you can explore further. For today, we'll go directly to the data tool itself and click on this to launch the application. So the tool is going to open in a new tab here. And if I give it a second to load. Yep. So starting out, you'll see the splash splash screen that tells us kind of that the data is open source here from the organizations below, and you can explore the data sources here further if you like. And some of the data sources included here are the Census American Community Survey, and CDC, as well as the CDC National Immunization Survey. So I'm going to click OK to continue exploring the tool. Okay. So before we dive in and start playing with different features here, just wanted to take a minute and show you the default view. So there are two main components here on the map right now. You can see that there is a map layer with different gradients that you can add more information or remove data from it, and we'll go into those further later. And then you can also see the symbols for locations that are default on top. In this default view here, we have the social vulnerability index. That is the main layer showing the different gradients. And then the vaccine provider locations layered on top. And these are the little symbols. We'll go into each of these in a minute here. But also just to orient you for what the tool has. On the top right corner here, there are 5 different features or symbols in the top right panel. The first one in this little listing is the legend that lets you look at, for example, the vaccine provider locations are in this symbol with the needle, and that's what we just talked about here. And then what is also mapped here in the default view is social vulnerability index by tract. And you can see that the darker gradient colors are the ones with higher SVI. The second symbol that I'll point out in the top right corner is layer list, and this is this squared stacked thing, and lets you explore the various layers that are included and featured, and we can go through, and we will be going through how to add and remove a couple of these as we explore the tool. The plus sign here is the third symbol and allows us to add data that is not yet available in the layer list that we had just looked at. The cursor is a select tool for selecting specific geographic area on the map. And lastly, the funnel is a filter tool. So let's go back to the legend. We had already mentioned that the vaccine provider locations, they are sourced from vaccine.gov, and they are showing COVID-19 vaccination providers layered on the map. And then for SVI, if some of you might be already familiar with it, but this is a way to understand the social vulnerability faced by the community, and this is down by the census tract level. So let's go through an example first. So say I am an organization that operates in Atlanta, and I'm wondering where are the areas where there are communities with higher social vulnerability. So what I'll do is, let me zoom out a little bit. I'll look at this map, and from the legend, we can see that the darker blue are areas with higher social vulnerability. And I see that there's one in the northeast area of Atlanta with the darker blue. So we'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit in this area. And you can do that by clicking on the plus sign here. So if I want to learn more about this census tract, I can click on it. So I'll do that here. And I learned that this census tract is census tract 119 in Fulton County. It gives me more information about its SVI score. It's 0.77. So you might already be familiar with SVI, but it is a ranking to see where this census tract stands compared to other census tracts. So the score ranges from 0 to 1, and a higher score indicates higher vulnerability. So a score here of 0.77 for census tract 119 indicates high vulnerability. If I scroll down a little bit more, I can explore more information about the census tract. So a census tract is an aggregation of 4 things. They are socioeconomic, household composition and disability, and minority status and language, as well as housing status, housing type, and transportation. So I can see here from this bar graph that in this census tract, it is facing especially higher vulnerability in the housing and transportation thing. So then if I X out of this little information box, now that I've already identified that this is an area, a census tract with high social vulnerability, perhaps I want to understand where are the vaccine provider locations that are near this community. So we see that looking for these symbols with the needles, there are 2 that are within the census tract itself, and also a couple of them right outside the census tract. So if I want to learn more about what these provider locations are, I can also click on one, for example, this one, and I learned that this is a Walgreens, and it also includes information such as the address and the in-stock status of this location. And again, this is showing COVID-19 vaccines. I'm just gonna pause here, take a look at the chat to make sure covering any questions. Okay, don't see questions just yet, but definitely feel free to post in the chat or Q&A if you have questions as we go through. I'll do my best to check them as we go. Okay, so now that we kind of know the lay of the land, let's see if we can add other map layers to this map. For example, if I am an organization who operates in Fulton County, and I am conducting outreach to the Black or African American community specifically, we can go about that. So let's first zoom out again, since I zoomed in quite a bit already, back to the bigger map. And before, so I can first zoom out here, and for the purpose of this example, I'm going to also search for Fulton County. So you can see the search box here in the top left corner of the screen. And so I'm gonna type in Fulton County. So the search will be pretty specific, but if I zoom out a little bit more, I will be able to search for the county fully. Yep. So here's Fulton County, Georgia. So if I select that, it's going to tell me that in the center of the screen here is Fulton County, and also indicates a point here. So before we add more layers to this map, I'm going to just deselect the current layers just to make this a little cleaner to start with. So going to the layer list, so the second symbol in the top right corner, I'm going to go here, and I note that the providers is a point of interest. So I will go ahead and unclick that. And then we still have the SVI layer. So I'm going to go to this bucket and unclick social vulnerability index. So as I mentioned, in this example, we're going to look for race and ethnicity information. So if I go down to minority status and language, there is a map layer called race and Hispanic origin by tract. I'm going to go ahead and click that to add this to the map. So then while the map is updating, you'll notice that it takes a little longer, but I'm going to give it a second. And then to first understand how this map layer is visualized, we can go back to the legend. So the first symbol in the top right corner here again, you see. So now we see that this layer, race and Hispanic origin by tract. It is showing the where the largest what the largest race and ethnicity group is by census tract. So in many areas of Fulton County here, you can see that the largest race or ethnicity group in this area is Black or African American, while some parts in the southwest part of the county here is primarily white. So then if I want to look at several factors at the same time, or kind of compare and contrast, for example, if my organization wants to focus my outreach in areas with higher social vulnerability, and also targeting my outreach specific to the Black or African American communities, then I can do so by toggling 2 layers and compare and contrast. So to do that, I'm going back to the layer list, which is the second symbol in the top right corner here. And I can toggle off the race and Hispanic origin map layer, and then select the SVI layer again. So you can see that in Fulton County in this, let me zoom in a little bit, northern area, you're seeing some census tracts with darker blue. And then if I toggle this off and toggle on race and ethnicity again, then we can see that these are the areas with a larger Black or African American population, and also population with higher SVI. And then as a next step, now that we identify where the communities in need that I want to focus on and where they're located in the county, maybe I want to explore what are some of the places of interest in this area that I can partner with for example, in-person events. So to do that, I can add points of interest by navigating to, again, the layer list under points of interest. There are several options here, but for the purpose of today, we can add maybe libraries, for example, and you can see that they're popping up live on the map too. And then there's also places of worship, for example. And then we can go back to the legend just to make sure that we know that the libraries are the symbols with the book, and places of worship is this symbol with a person. So this is a good way for us to understand what are some of the partnership opportunities and points of interest are located in areas that might have a higher need that you want to focus on. Okay, let me go back to the chat, and I think I see something in a Q&A. I see a question from Jade. Does one of the filter includes average income and food deserts indicators? I know that there is information on income, food deserts. We're happy to explore these with you live, and if we have time in the end today, if not, we're happy to do that in an office hour with you. Okay. Now let's look at a different scenario. For example, my organization operates across several counties in greater Atlanta area, not just in Fulton County. And I want to understand where the population who are at a higher risk of developing severe COVID illness due to having certain chronic conditions, so that I can focus my outreach to these populations for vaccination events. So before we begin, again, going back to the layer list to uncheck the layers, just so we start from a clean slate. So we kind of went through some of the topics here, but just wanted to call out that there are several topic areas included in this layer list. They are health information, points of interest, socioeconomic status, household composition and disability, minority status and language, and finally housing type and transportation. Under each, there are some of the default layers that are already included that you can explore. So if we want to look at population with chronic conditions who put them at a higher risk for developing severe COVID, I see that under health information, there is cancer preference, or COPD preference, and obesity preference. So I could certainly do that. But also, if we want to look at all these chronic conditions together in one view, we can find that data by using the Add Data button. So this is the third symbol in the top right panel. And we can do that by searching on the Esri Living Atlas. So in this Add Data feature, you can either search by curated or ArcGIS Online. So curated collection features are they're more ready to use geographic information that includes data as potential starting points for your exploration. The ArcGIS Online library, this includes maps and data that are uploaded by users and that are available for public use. So for our purpose today, we're going to search for chronic conditions in this curated library. I can spell chronic. Search. So I see that there is one layer called selected chronic conditions by US county. And I also see that this data was uploaded by Data CDC. So that this is a reputable source. Now go ahead and add that. And I should zoom out a little bit since this is a county level data and I want to look across several counties. Okay, so we can see that this layer is already added to my map. So moving back here to my legend to further understand how this map is being visualized, we see that this is mapping selected chronic conditions by county. And the gradient tells me that the darker orange or redder color are counties with higher prevalence rate of these chronic conditions. So if I look at the map here, if I zoom in a little bit, in the Atlanta area, it looks like Clayton County, south of Atlanta, as well as this one, Rockdale County in the eastern part, east of Atlanta has higher higher preference of individuals with chronic conditions. And for example, if I want to look at existing vaccine provider locations that are already in this area, so I can see if the individuals have access to these providers, I can go back to the layer list and add my vaccine provider locations here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And you'll notice that we don't see this location pop up immediately on the map. And that is because if you look at this list here, the locations are below the chronic conditions map that we had just added. So in order to put this layer on top and have it overlaid over the chronic conditions map, I can go here to this 3 dots, the ellipsis, for more options, and then click move up. And since this is several layers up below the chronic conditions, I will have to do this several times before I can move this up to the ahead of the chronic conditions one. So bear with me as I do this for a second. Okay, should just be one more time. Here we go. So now I can see the vaccine provider locations overlaid on top of the chronic conditions map. So then, for example, if I go back to this one, we know that this is Rockdale County that has a higher percentage and prevalence of individuals with chronic conditions. And these are the vaccine provider locations that are available to these individuals in the county. Okay, let me pause here again, going to the Q&A as I see a few questions. Okay, I see several questions. So Danielle mentioned, will there be a move up to top feature added later? That is a great question. I would love that feature too, but we can look into that. How often is the SVI version updated? The 2020 SVI came out in August. Also, the things have changed. Yeah, so this is definitely a good call out. Currently, I think the SVI information included in here is not 2020. Let me check actually. And you can find more information by looking at the details of the layer. But we can check and follow up with you on that. And is there a way to show only the sites where vaccines are in stock? Yes, that is actually part of my next step. So I'll be sure to cover that. Cool. Okay, so take a sip of water. For this last scenario, we're going to explore language preference, and also based on the question, also look at in-stock status for vaccine provider locations. So let me uncheck the data first. And let's go here. So to answer a question, if we can check for filter for only the vaccine provider locations are in stock, we can do that with the attribute table. So to get to that, you can click on at the bottom of the screen, there's a little triangle, and we can do that. Click on that to pull up the attribute table. And you can see that it tells me like all the address information and in-stock status of vaccine provider locations. So then if I want to look at only those who are locations are in stock, I can click on options, filter, add expression, and then from this drop-down list, I'm going to look for in stock. And I think this is a flag by 1 or 0, if I'm not mistaken. So is at least 1, I believe. Search for it. Yep. And you'll notice that some of the locations disappear on the map because they were not in stock. And if I look in my attribute table here on the right hand side, all the in stock status for these locations are yes now. And if I want to, for example, have a full list of all these locations and the addresses, I can copy and paste the information from the attribute table and paste them in, for example, your Excel spreadsheet. And you can use that to look at the data in tabular form, manipulate them further, or you can, if you want to share your information with a colleague, that might be a good way to do so too. Okay, so we'll show one more scenario since we have time here. We'll look at language preferences. So for example, if I am an organization who is again based in the greater Atlanta area, and I want to see where the populations who speak Spanish at home, so I can provide more tailored outreach to them. So to do that, we're going back to our layer list, which is the second symbol in the top right corner here. I will uncheck vaccine provider locations for now. And under the minority status and language, there is a map layer called language spoken at home. So we'll go ahead and click that. So that map is going to update. So going to the map legend here to see how the map is visualized, so we can know what the layers, what the colors mean. From here, we can see that language spoken at home is mapped by census tract, and the colors indicate what the language is. So areas that are shaded brown or red is percent of population who speak English at home. And areas in yellow are the census tract where the majority of the population speaks Spanish at home. So these are, so if Atlanta is kind of at the center of the map here, I think this area, for example, in DeKalb County, there are several census tracts that are primarily Spanish speakers at home. So then going back to my attribute table, so I can show you that. Again, there is a lot of information here. Let me actually, sometimes the map will add automatically the map you have selected to the attribute table. Sometimes it doesn't. So in this case, I will add the attribute table manually myself. And you can do that by going back to the layer list. Click on the 3 dots for additional options. And then scroll down. And select view in attribute table. So that's going to populate the this layer in a different tab. And you can see that there is a lot of information here, really. There is census tract information, the county, and as well as if you continue scrolling to the right, several columns on language spoken by home by age group. Like 5 to 17, 18 to 64, as well as specific groups of languages. So then if I want to just filter this table down to look at population who primarily speak Spanish at home, I can do that again, going back to options, filter, and I can add expression. And you can really filter by any column available in a table. In this case, we're going to look for percent of population who speak Spanish at home, which is this one. And then we're going to say it's greater than, for example, 50%. And then I click OK. So you'll see that the map already updated to show only the census tracts that have population more than 50% of the population who speak Spanish at home. And again, this attribute table is also showing only the filtered result. So you can, again, copy and paste this if you want to collaborate and share this with a colleague, looking at this in a tabular form, and copy and paste in a spreadsheet if you wish. Okay. So I think I about extended my time to demo this tool, so I'm going to go back to the slides. So we are running out of time. Okay. Okay. So I know I just went through a lot of information, but definitely it would be probably most helpful and makes more sense if you also go in a tool and try this yourself. So we have, I think, about 5 or so minutes for you to go into a planner. Here is a short scenario that you can use to start exploring your tool. Feel free to, we'll put the link to the vaccine activity planner in the chat, and you can navigate to the area where you're planning to conduct vaccination and outreach activities, identify vaccine provider locations, and maybe also schools in the census tracts with higher social vulnerability. And while you're doing that, feel free to type in the chat if you have any questions, and we have like about 5 or 10 minutes or so for a Q&A. Oh, thanks, Giovanna. I was just trying to figure out how to post the link. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll answer them. So, see the first question here in Q&A, is there a way to show topographical features and see some waters but not mountains? So, there are ways you can add the topographical information from the ArcGIS online to search for it, but there isn't like a way to change the base map if that's what you're asking. But we can look into that, and we've made a note of that. I see the next two questions look the same, but they are both about finding out what events are going on. So to my knowledge, I don't think there are map layers that show live events, unless there are organizations that publish that on GIS for other organizations to reach out to. I think we have maybe a couple more minutes for Q&A. And then as Ryan mentioned at the beginning of the call, we also have developed a how-to guide that cover really many of the steps that I just covered in the demo, and we'll be sharing that, distributing that to you after this webinar. So that can be your companion guide as you explore the vaccine activity planner further on your own time. And additionally, definitely feel free to reach out to us to set up additional time for training, and also to just explore the data layers and topics that you might be interested. And we're definitely happy to schedule some time to go over that with you and your organization. Okay. So Tara, thank you for noting that. So for additional training, we'll put our in the next steps, we have our email address, but we'll also put in the chat here. You can reach out to us via email, and with the types of topic and just more information on what you'd like to explore, and we're happy to set up additional time to go through training with you and your organization. But I also see the other question. So Does this tool show organizations in the census tract that are conducting COVID outreach? So this is similar to the question about events that, to my knowledge, not really. But if there are organizations who upload that information to the online library, that would be available, but. I think we have time for one more question here. Are there plans to disaggregate language data? So I think the default layers for the language spoken at home is down to the census tract level. If there are more other custom ways or more granular ways that you'd like to look at that, feel free to email us, and we'll look into that and go through that with you. Okay, so let me go to the next slide so that we can keep us on track. So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Giovanna, who will go over an overview of the how-to guide that we will be distributing after this webinar. And I'm going to go on mute now, but also put our team's email address in the chat. So you can feel free to reach out to us too for additional information or to schedule additional training as needed. So over to you, Giovanna.
Thank you, Eve, and thanks for that great demo. As Eve mentioned, we're really excited to bring you this step-by-step guide that helps you explore on your own the vaccine activity planner. It encompasses much of what Eve discussed today. Similar to the demo, it introduces you to the key functionalities of the tool, but it also helps you navigate using screenshots to make it easier for you to follow. The guide also features a navigation panel at the top and home button at the bottom that allows you to easily navigate the guide and get to your desired step. So throughout the guide, there are map interpretations, insights, and use cases that will help guide you through how you or your organization can use this as you plan your own strategies. So I will pass it back to Louise for some polling questions.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation and the insightful Q&A session. So before we close and announce our upcoming events, we just have a few polls that I will launch. So just please answer them as they pop up on your screen. The first one is going to be the satisfaction poll. One second. And the Digital team already went ahead and sent the email in the chat for booking office hours, or if you have any other further questions after the session, please feel free to email them there. All right, I'll give a few more seconds for this poll, and then we'll move on to the next couple ones. All right, and I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so there's 3 in this one. So if you scroll down, the questions are on the slides, but then please go ahead and answer the questions on the pop-up window. While I give a few more seconds for the poll, I went ahead and sent a big blob of messages in the chat. You'll be able to see the event information on the next slide. If we can go to that maybe now. All right, so these are some of our upcoming events. We have one on April 27th called Collecting Qualitative Data in Your Community. As it says in the slide, the session is currently full, but if you'd like to join the waitlist, please go ahead and message us at vaxequitylearning@urban.org. And then we have two more events, one on May 2nd about the vaccine access after the end of the public health emergency. And we have one more on May 3rd, which is our PAVE Learning Community Member Orientation. The links to register are in the chat, and the email to contact to be added to the waitlist for the first event is also in the chat. I think we can go to the next slide as well. And I think that also brings us to the end of our event. I'll pass it back to the Digit team if you have any closing remarks, but if not, then I can go ahead and close out for us.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. Really appreciate it. On behalf of the DITA team, just wanted to say we appreciate your time and participation today. Just to reiterate, a recording of the webinar and the how-to guide will be shared to PAVE members after the event. As always, please reach out to us if you have any questions or would like any additional support with the vaccine activity planner. Our email is in the chat, but if you didn't get it, it is datainformedta@cdc.gov. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for your time. And that is it for us. Thank you.
All right, and I know we still have a few minutes, so we'll go ahead and give you all back maybe 6-7 minutes of your days. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you at our upcoming events in the next coming weeks.